Hafa day, everyone. Welcome to D16 tonight. I'm Ken Quintaniza. We have 3 of your candidates running for senator live in studio to take your questions. All you have to do is go to our Facebook page and interact with us on our live stream. For those of you already online, fire away. We'll get to your questions in a bit. But with us this week, we have Republican senatorial candidates, former Senator Chris Duenas, incumbent Mary Torres, and former DepCorp Director Jose San Agustin. Before we begin, I'll give each of you about 30 seconds for some introductory comments. Once we get into the question and answer portion, we'll give each of you about 30 seconds to respond. So I guess I'll start with you, Chris.
Sure, thank you. I'm Chris Duenas, and thank you to the people of Guam for tuning in tonight. It's our pleasure to be here to discuss issues with you. 16 years in the private sector, and now going on 14 years in public service. I've served 2 administrations, and I've served 2 terms in the legislature, mostly concentrating on youth issues, as well as government reform and reorganization and efficiency. If elected senator in this coming term and going into the 34th Guam legislature, I will concentrate on cleaning up our island, working with you to ensure we clean up our island. Every household should have a rollout cart for low or no cost. I can tell you right now, with this coastal cleanup, over 24,000 pounds of trash was picked up in 4 hours. That's unconscionable.
And Mary?
Hafa day. My name is Mary Camacho Torres. I'm a current senator in the 33rd Guam legislature. When I ran for office 2 years ago, I promised to do good government, to be a responsible senator, to pass legislation that had an actual effect on improving your lives in some way or another. And a lot of what I've done has been modernizing some of our old laws. And I want to continue to put forth legislation that is responsive to your needs. And I think that if you want government that truly puts you first, I humbly ask that you support me, somebody that is true, somebody that's true to the cause and that will do the right thing for you, no matter what. Si Diyos maasi.
And Jose?
Hafa day, good evening. My name is Jose San Agustin, and I served in the United States Marine Corps for 30 years. The reason for my running are several issues. Our veterans, and of course, being a Marine, I would like to be your voice to ensure that our veterans that have served our country are taken care of medically, get better medical service, and prevent homelessness. The other one is the drug epidemic on Guam that has taken over a lot of our families. That has become a very serious issue. Understanding that I was a director of DOC, I've seen the damage that this has caused many of the families. Thank you.
Okay, and I guess we'll get to our questions now. The first question I have is, if elected, what is the first bill you would introduce in your term? I'll start with Mary.
In my first term, currently I've introduced a lot of legislation that had to do with voter registration reform. And this bill modernized a lot of the way we register to vote, and it provided for online registration. I also had a lot of bills that made it easier for people. For example, it gave maternity leave for women, and it also established what parental leave was for mothers, fathers, regardless of their gender. And in my next term, what I want to do is focus on legislation that addresses some of the environmental issues, and also legislation that addresses economic impetus, how we can get people back to work.
Okay, next, Jose.
Well, I would like to work closely with the federal government and create a bill to be able to bring a representative here to expedite many of the delay of paperwork in order to get better treatment for our veterans. The process as it is right now is that the paperwork has to be sent off to Hawaii, reviewed, and many times that takes a long time. And that's not acceptable. Our veterans, they did not hesitate when they volunteered to join the military. I think they are entitled to better care, and one way to do that is being an advocate to fight for them and be able to bring the resource here so that we could expedite that process.
And Chris, what would be the first bill?
Ken, the first bill I'm going to introduce is going to be called the Respeto Itano Act of 2017. Basically, translated, this is to respect our land. This will be an initiative to ensure that the current 17,000 households that are having rollout service, recycle, and trash service will actually expand out to the 48,000 households that we have. That means the disparity between 17,000 households right now and 48,000 households is exactly why we see all the trash we see around the island and illegal dump sites. You know, Ken, right now we're subsidizing solid waste at the tune of $14 million. And we also have a situation where we have a lot of recycling funds and other funds that are not going to the true cause of making sure we get rid of our waste stream. So this will be my first bill.
Okay, and we got some of the Facebook questions. Art Murphy, hello. He asked, do you support reducing the number of senators? I know there's been some discussion about that before, so I'll start with Jose. Do you support reducing the number of senators?
I thank you for that question. I think at one time it used to be 21, and then now we're down to 15. I understand in the United States, you know, each state, they only have like 1 or 2 senators. I'm up for discussion on that. I favor that, but I think, you know, I want to share this, that there, you know, if you have more folks making discussion and making wiser decisions, I think it's more productive than having very few. So it's something that I'm up for consideration.
Okay, and next, Chris, what, do you support reducing the number of senators?
I do not. I think that the current level at 15 is appropriate. I think that concentration of power is something we always have to watch out for. Right now, it takes 8 members of the legislature to pass a bill. It takes 10 members of the legislature to override the governor. And so if you look at it right now, you have to get a consensus, you know, of the group to get those votes. You see some bills that are even reasonable bills that sometimes won't make it if the individual doesn't go and convince enough senators that this is a good policy. And so I think that, you know, avoiding concentration of power and ensuring that, you know, we have a broad swath of ideas to move our island forward is something that our island and our people deserve.
And Mary?
I'm not in support of reducing it. I think 21 was a good number, and the reason I do is as Chris said, there's a concentration of power. The fewer that you have, the greater the concentration of power within a small select group. Also, by opening it up to a lot more candidates, you widen the chances of a diversity of people having a shot at the seat, and that is really where you have the best governance, when you have a broad spectrum of people and you have others that can come in to the mix. So I would not support a reduction. I think that it's a dangerous proposition.
And from reducing senators to reducing salaries, I know that's been a hot topic in regards to the raises for senators. Do you support a repeal of the raises? Chris, I'll start with you.
You know, I have no problem rolling back my salary as a senator. I will not be in support of rolling back the chief executive as well as the directors of the agencies, and I do not support the rollback of the mayors. I think the mayors are some of the hardest working people out there. They deserve that pay. They worked at low pay for so many years taking care of our people. And I think, you know, by and large, while there is some disagreement on the Hay study, I think as far as the cabinet officials and the governor and lieutenant governor, they got it right. You know, in the legislature, it comes down to, if you're running for the legislature, I don't think you should run for the legislature for a salary. I think you should run because you want to serve. And if you need a salary, you have to supplement it some other way.
And Mary, do you support the repeal of raises for senators?
I do support it, and I think that we have a situation where we have to be a little more fiscally responsible. And if there are ways that we can shift some of the revenues from one area to a more critical area, I would support that. And it would be a sacrifice on our part, but I think as public servants, that's a sacrifice that many of us are willing to take.
And Jose?
Well, repeal, take back my pay, but definitely not those folks that are working very hard out there, which are the mayors and the directors. But, you know, take mine back. These people have a lot of hard work ahead of them, and they deserve that compensation.
Okay, and I know that all of you are Republicans here, but one of the Democratic candidates, Jermaine Alerta, he's asking, do you support the specific recommendation of raising taxes to help fund the Guam Memorial Hospital? I'll start with Mary.
I do not support raising of taxes at this point. I think one of the things that we have to be concerned about is that our economy is really not doing that good. The small businesses and the mid-sized businesses are struggling right now. And as they struggle, they compromise the security of our economic, our stability of our economy on Guam. The answer is not to raise taxes. The answer is fiscal responsibility, controlled spending, and controlling the bleeding, I think, more than anything at this point in our government.
And Jose?
I don't want to put that on the hands of our taxpayers. I think there's other avenues that we can look about to ensure fiscal responsibility, but definitely not to raise taxes and burden our taxpayers.
And Chris?
You know, Ken, I think Jermaine, and I would hope that he knew that there was no taxes needed or required for the current bond that went out or even the bond to ensure that the hospital could become more viable. The talk about some ideas between raising fees was to create an insurance pool and ensure that we could insure our people so that we could reduce the amount of self-pay and no pay at the hospital. So I want to be clear, I am not in favor of raising taxes. I am in favor of a public discussion on how do we at one point in time finally insure the uninsured so we can really bring true health care to our people, and also to ensure that the hospital as well as other organizations can get paid promptly.
Thanks again, guys. We're going to take a quick break, but stay tuned. We have more D16 tonight.